And so, all right, let's get into this Bolton thing. It feels like the failure to account for what a disaster the Iraq War was/is continues to haunt us in so many ways. John Bolton is back. And just for folks who don't know who John Bolton is, tell us.
Well, John Bolton has always been a very, very hard right hawk. And he was, during the 90s, he was a member of a sort of a cabal that formed around the Iraq War and some ideas that sort of came out of the right during that period. What we called neocons at the time, and although it did have a sort of that cabal was more than just neocons, that was sort of the ideas that came out of it during the 90s were about this idea of what they would call benevolent hegemony, that it would be the Pax Americana, that Americans would rule the world in benevolent fashion, bring democracy and freedom, and we'd all sing Kumbaya.
This is the course, Project for a New American Century.
That's right.
Sometimes people refer to it as PNAC. Yeah.
The manifesto that sort of undergirded the argument that they raised to lead us into the Iraq War after 9/11, which they had been waiting for an opportunity. And in the manifesto, they actually said, we need a new Pearl Harbor. Yep. They got one. We all know the what happened then. Now, John Bolton, even among that crowd, was considered to be out there. I mean, he was even a fringe member of that particular group, and largely because his view, and we've talked, we can talk a little bit more about this, but he just to give the history, he came in and they put him in the State Department, sort of as Dick Cheney's mole in the State Department, and he sort of was there to keep an eye on Colin Powell. That was his role. And when Richard Armitage and Powell left, Richard Armitage was Powell's assistant, and they both were sort of leaving under a certain amount of duress after the first term. Bolton was supposed to be raised up to Assistant Secretary of State, and that didn't happen. Everyone objected, and it didn't. So they nominated him to be the UN ambassador, and they couldn't get the votes. Even the Republicans, a bunch of them wouldn't even vote for him. That's how far out he was. And think, this is 2005. The Republicans were out of their minds, right? John Bolton was too much for them. But Bush put him into the UN anyway in a recess appointment, and he made a complete fool of himself. They hated him there. Everyone hated him there. Condi Rice was having to call up the Secretary of State in the second term had to call up and constantly sort of tamp down whatever kind of problems he was causing in the UN. He is, in short, a nut. He is a far-right nut. Let me just put it this way. I don't know if people who are listening probably remember Atlas Shrugged, Pamela Geller. There's probably a lot of people who know who she is. She is a far-right Islamophobe, dangerous and violent person. She
ran the Ground Zero Mosque campaign. She was the one who funded the draw a cartoon about Muhammad, event. She is a lunatic. She is now she's considered such a lunatic, in fact, that our Brendan, our producer in absentia these days, was talking about was telling us about the story about how her kids have tried to hide their identity, have had to try and to get out from under being her daughter. That's how, it's sad. And they sort of renounced their teenage years where they were also Islamophobic. And then they went off to college and realized, oh my God, something to that effect. But she is a lunatic. So I just want to set that up as you talk about Bolton's relationship with her.
Well, they're very close. Let's just put it that way. Lunatic.
He blurbed her book. He blurbed
her book. He has appeared. In fact, if you go to YouTube, you can see the interviews between Pam Geller and John Bolton. In fact, I mean, I don't mean to spread rumors or anything, but there are rumors that they were actually, close, if you know what I mean.
Reparations are to be paid. In other words, yes.
And so I mean, this is that is the kind of that is the fringe side that John Bolton exists on. Now, it's true he was in government back in the 2000s in the Bush administration. He did have some quasi credibility as some sort of a government bureaucrat, but the truth is that he is a fringe dweller. Just, not that far in, maybe a couple of degrees out of, Alex Jones. I mean, that's how bad he is. And as the idea that he is going to be the national security advisor is, there's a reason why people are, even people who aren't normally, the sort of panic artist types are going, oh my God. Now, getting back to what we were talking about, what I mentioned earlier, his association with the neocons. The truth is that the neocons had varying degrees of neoconservatism, this idea of, let's all sing Kumbaya and bring democracy at the point of a gun, and we're going to run things. Bolton is a much more straightforward neocon. It doesn't really matter. I mean, these definitions are irrelevant to the fact that it's all about, American dominance, war, and whatever kind of gloss you want to put on it. We're spreading democracy, or we're just going to take the resources. It doesn't really matter because it all adds up to the same thing.
Exactly.
But in Bolton's case, he is much more straightforward, about what he believes. And he believes there should be no international law, that the United States is a law unto itself. He has said this, that there's only one law, and the law is what's good for the United States. And the rest of the world has to abide by that law. He believed that the United Nations shouldn't exist, even though he became the ambassador to the United Nations, which was always kind of you've got to be kidding. This guy is very, very much, I mean, as far as I can tell, what he really is just a straight up old-fashioned imperialist. Just, we're going to take over, we're going to dominate. And in that respect, he is very much like Donald Trump. They are national security soulmates. And, going back to the American Carnage speech and Donald Trump's campaign, when everybody was saying, oh, he wants to withdraw from the world and everything, and, America first, I felt that people were being confused about him. They didn't understand what he really was. And that is, when he says America first, he means we're number one. That's what Donald Trump means by that phrase. He's not talking about,
care for the domestic needs before
exactly. It's not
others.
William Howard Taft and, let's withdraw behind our borders. Yes, he wants to build walls. But it's not. But that's just to keep out the foreigners. The idea. There's a reason he wants to expand the military to the point. On a level that we haven't seen since the height of the Cold War and maybe beyond. And that is where he and Bolton are on the same page. And what's scary is that we have two crises on the horizon, very, very serious. One, of course, is North Korea. The other is Iran, if Trump decides to tear up the Iran deal, which the hiring of Bolton is an absolutely clear signal they're going to do that. So when you look at
all right, so I want to just pause there for a second, and we should talk about the implications of what would happen with the Iran deal. But I just want to also reiterate this point about John Bolton. In the past, about 3 weeks ago, he wrote a piece basically describing how we could win a war with North Korea. And maybe it was a year ago, he said the way to stop Iran, maybe it was 2 years ago. He literally wrote an op-ed piece in the Times. The other one was in the Wall Street Journal, if I remember. In the Times, the piece was entitled something like "The way to stop Iran from getting a bomb is to bomb Iran." I mean, so this is a guy who is again diplomacy, and we should also say this is at a time where, like, I should add his position is basically in charge of absorbing all of the government's ideas, essentially, all of the national security apparatus ideas, and giving them as options to the president. So he has the ability of saying, like, here are the options. You can bomb them, or you can invade them and bomb them. I mean, that's basically what is the concern here. And the other concern is there's no mitigating factors. There's a gutted State Department. There are no people around, Donald Trump to say, hey, actually, that may not be the best idea. There might be some other ideas. There's no other like funnel of ideas short of, and I'm not saying this facetiously, Sean Hannity.
Well, I was just going to add that is where Trump is getting his advice. I mean, for instance, and I don't want to digress into the details here at the moment, but just this morning he's now threatening to veto the spending bill, which the White House had agreed to. The Republicans have passed. Yay, they've got their spending bill. He's now going to veto it, and the reason is because he was watching Laura Ingraham, and she was saying there wasn't enough money for the wall, and so he's mad. And so that is the other. He's going to have John Bolton, and he's going to have Sean Hannity and Laura Ingraham and Tucker Carlson and whatever the Fox and Friends bozos are. Those are the people that he listens to now. There's nobody else. I mean, and I mean that literally. There just isn't anybody. I mean, I guess Mattis over at the Pentagon, who knows what he's going to do. He's lost his allies now. I guess Kelly is sort of one of his allies.
Supposedly, right? But I mean, Kelly seems to be completely, aside from being a horrible person at his core, to the extent that he was exercising any discipline on Trump, that seems to be over. I mean, you had said to me, I think 2 or 3 weeks ago, that you had felt that the 2 or 3 weeks prior that Trump was really behaving in a way that suggested that he was starting to feel his oats. Like he started to realize like he controls this place and he doesn't need to kowtow or to listen to anybody. And since that time, he has gotten rid of his top lawyer in the Russian thing. He's gotten rid of Tillerson. He has now gotten rid of McMaster and replaced them with complete cronies. I mean, total yes men. And it's clearly that's going on.
Oh, I no longer think there's any doubt. I got a feeling about that maybe a month ago that I'm going, okay, something shifted, and it had to do with the idea that he was suddenly, he'd either just decided that things weren't going well, and he just was deciding that well, I'm the one who has to take charge here because none of these people know what they're talking about, obviously, or he's starting to get panicked about the Mueller investigation and decided that he needed to do some dramatic things in order to try and change the trajectory in some way, and maybe set up the idea that he was going to fire Mueller. In any case, it doesn't matter because he is doing this. I mean, it's pretty clear. He's just basically taking a wrecking ball to his entire administration. Tillerson was the other one. I mean, he's just letting them all go and basically, encouraging anybody who wants to go to walk out. And he's replacing them with, people he sees on TV. That's essentially the sort of, the whatever headhunting he's doing is doing it when he's watching TV and eating his cheeseburgers in bed. And by the way, there was a report yesterday that he was actually thinking of eliminating the job of chief of staff altogether and running the White House like he ran the Trump organization, which, I think everybody needs to remember that was a tiny little, family boutique company that he inherited from his father. It's not the United States of America's government. But he thinks that he can do that, and he doesn't want anybody telling him what to do. So, He's letting go. He's unrestrained. He's doing what he wants. And what he wants to do is please the Fox News people. That seems obvious to me. That is who he is governing.
There was something that really stuck. I mean, this is going to seem so narrow and myopic, but on, I guess it was just 2 days ago, Trump had a tweet that was when he was talking about calling Putin. and people wanted him. He wrote something like, people wanted me to excoriate him, and I'll tell you why this stuck out with me. There is one person that I have heard use the word excoriate over and over and over again for the past 3 or 4 years, and it is Sean Hannity. And I don't think that Donald Trump has ever used that word before.
Never.
Very few people use it. But if you listen to Sean Hannity, even half as much as I do, and God forgive us all, that word, and that's what just, it spooked me. Like, I'm not convinced that Sean Hannity isn't writing some of his tweets for him. Like texting.
He might be.
I mean,